The application itself is quite an onerous part of the process, because it's not just the application, it's essays, and maybe it's interviews, and it's personal statements, and those are things which can be the differentiator. Let's call them the tiebreakers. A great essay maybe gets you into a college, whereas your SAT score wouldn't have.
So the colleges, and we've talked about this in other shows, that the colleges are now taking a more expansive view of what determines whether they'll select a kid. But in terms of paying for it, one of the things you talk about, and we'll talk about this later in the show too, is figuring out whether there are maybe 2 or 3 colleges that supply the same kinds of things, but one may be significantly cheaper than the other school.
Yeah, let's talk about that for a moment, because while schools may all look alike, or similar schools may look alike, when you get down to it, some of those schools, and I'll example that some of the Ivy League schools, for instance, will give 100% of the need aid, whereas another school, which looks much cheaper on paper, will not be giving 100% of the need. So in other words, it could be cheaper to go to a high-level school than it is to some of the state schools.
But it's just in terms of your research and figuring out what the school offers.
Yes, and that's the thing that most parents don't understand and they don't do. What happens really, the first thing we look at is the cost. What's the cost? Yeah? Well, the cost in their eyes is what the sticker price is. But in actual fact, that's not the important thing. The important thing is how much help you're going to get from the college and how much you're going to reduce that sticker price.
And of course, if your kid is going to a college that's far away versus right in town, a lot of other particulars to talk about. One of the things that's specific, and I want to get to this, is the FAFSA, because you have to fill out that form regardless of what college you're going to, correct?
Right. If you want access to federal government aid, you have to fill out the FAFSA. Now, the FAFSA has to be filled out in the high school, senior year of high school for the kids, and then it has to be filled out every year that they're going to college after that. It's not a one-shot deal. And the FAFSA opens the door to the government aid.
We're going to talk more about specifics in the FAFSA and the specifics that you need to know in terms of getting a grip on those college costs. We'll do all that after the break. Keep it right here on 12 in Our Schools. Welcome back to 12 in Our Schools. I'm Brian Jenkins. Today we're talking about slaying the college tuition monster, or at least keeping him tamed. With me is Ian Wellham, co-founder of Complete College Planning Solutions. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. Let's talk specifics of how parents and adult students can begin to whittle down some of that cost. There are some things, a number of things that we talked about earlier that you list on your website as well. Doubling their eligibility for scholarships and grants. You talk about things like girls applying to traditionally boys' school and vice versa.
Yes.
Is that a legitimate tactic?
It's a very legitimate tactic. When you look at, for instance, some of the science and technology schools, they're crying out for girls.
Really?
So if you've got a talented girl, you can see that those schools are going to, sometimes in many cases, increase their acceptance rates of girls, and also offer some of that all-important merit aid and other grants to help it become much more affordable. Likewise, there are some schools where the reverse is taking place, where the undergraduate population of girls has already reached maybe 60% in the school, and that's seen as a tipping point, and they would really like to get more boys in which case they're going to encourage boys by making it easier to get in, and again tempting them with incentives, with grants and money from the college.
Interesting. Now, how does a parent find out about all that?
Well, that's the problem. It's very difficult to find out about that. It's not published information. It's information which you need to research very carefully, and that's one of the things that people like us can help with in a big way. And you've got a website that folks can go to. Yeah. We'll be throwing that up on the bottom of the screen, but give us the site again. It's CompleteCollegePlanningSolutions.com. Okay. And we'll have a link on our website, of course, where folks can find that. Great. But I want to get back to how parents find out about some of these little things. Can they call individual schools once let's say they have a list of their top 10 that the kid's thinking about?
who do you call at the schools? Would this be a guidance counselor or someone? Or?
You can call the admissions office, and you can visit their websites, and you can try to glean information. Some of the information isn't necessarily published, and you need a discussion with the right person. In certain cases, they're going to reveal that information, and in certain cases, that they're going to keep it close to the chest. The most important thing is do as much research as you can. I think most parents don't do that, and they don't understand exactly how the college system works.
You talked about the key is choosing the right school, and we touched on this earlier, but there are schools that obviously if you have a kid who knows exactly what he or she wants to do, and there's a particular school that services that end, you're going to pick that school. But let's say you have a kid who picks 5 or 6 schools. What are some of the particulars that they have to look at in terms of picking one that's affordable?
Well, one of the things that they should do is they should try to look at what's the most important criteria at that school. Let's say we've got a kid whose SAT results are not great, but let's say that they have a great class schedule and they have an excellent GPA. Then there are certain schools who are going to want that child and not care about their SAT results. And of course that means when they want them, they see them as an asset. When they see them as an asset, money becomes available to reduce the cost.
I see. Now talk about some of these little known grants that are out there. I mean, I read somewhere they've got grants for left-handed people or you know, girls who have green eyes. I mean, there are some very specific things that are being offered out there.
Yeah, I like to refer to those as the private scholarships. What's going on there is there's a myriad of those, maybe 500,000 of them out there, and they're granted by from corporations to just individuals. Sometimes it's the Rotary Club, and the criteria for obtaining them is as wide as you've just described. The secret there, I think, is one, to be industrious about your search and to use a search engine. We have a search engine on our website which you could just use to help you find those kinds of scholarships.
You talked earlier about the merit scholarships, and this is regardless of financial need.
It is regardless of financial need. So it doesn't matter, even Bill Gates' kid, you can get some money. In fact, it's great. There's some colleges where their websites actually explain that. Case Western, for instance, Case Western Reserve in Ohio, they actually have a section on their website that just exactly explains that. They say, for instance, that 93% of freshmen get some kind of aid, and also that the merit-based aid there is available to everyone. It's agnostic of income.
One other thing I want to talk about, and again, we touched on this earlier, maximizing the financial aid you're allowed to get. Now, what does that mean? If you go to your school and you fill out the FAFSA, you've got a couple of grants, and maybe your kid gets a scholarship or something, and at some point a parent says, okay, well now I'll eat the last $15,000 of that. What would you say to that parent?
Well, when you receive your award letter, most parents just accept it. They don't look at the opportunity perhaps to appeal it.
But you can appeal to get more.
That's correct. In fact, that's one of the things which we do regularly for our families. We had a kid who's going to a really good college, and he was awarded about $40,000, which sounded great. But that family was relatively low income. So we appealed on 2 fronts, really, on his academic capabilities and their financial situation. And that college came back with an extra $6,000 of grants per year. That's $24,000 to that family, which is a really great thing.
Yeah, that's a lot of money, and I can tell you, having just been through that 4-year process, I wish we knew what we knew, what we're finding out now.
Right.
So again, these are things that parents just have to be diligent about, and they can go and find these things on other sites or at the schools themselves, correct?
In some cases they can. In other cases they really need to seek professional help because it's so involved and it's so complex that they're most likely, if they don't have what we describe it as a college blueprint, a plan that encompasses everything. I mean, you know, if you want to build something or be successful at something, you have to have a great plan.
Right.
And that's what you need for college as well.
All right, collegeplanningsolutions.com. We'll check it out. Thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it. Straight ahead on the show, Education News of the Week. Keep it right here on 12 in Our Schools. We'll be right back.